Hello guys, ghouls and gals, and welcome back to the archives. I'm your host, Nick Nightmare, and it's that time of year again, All Hallows Eve. And this year, I'm here to tell you about an exceptionally interesting horror mystery game I found a little while ago. Now, I know I'm probably late to the mark with this one, but it is still an interesting enough game that I knew I wanted to make a video on it at some point. That game is Killer Frequency. Now, this is my warning to all you lovely viewers out there. This video will be going over the plot of the game, including some gameplay sections, story beats, and the ending. If a game about solving the mystery behind a psycho killer while also hosting a radio talk show seems interesting to you, I would highly suggest playing the game for yourself first before coming back to listen to my thoughts about it. The game will be a much better experience if you go through it blind. That being said, let's get right into it. Killer Frequency is a first-person puzzle horror game. You play as the charismatic Forrest Nash on radio station 189.6 The Scream, with your co-host and producer, Peggy Weaver. Forrest is a former big-time radio host, even knowing a couple big celebrities, who was invited to host his very own radio show in Gallows Creek, a little podunk town in the middle of nowhere. But it's not all bad. Peggy, one of the locals of the town, is there with you too, ready to help you with tonight's show as you all play a little game called Guess That Scream. But in the middle of your show, you get a call from the local 911 operator, as she tells you that the local sheriff is dead, and there's no one else around who can stop this killer on the loose. The closest police station's phones are down, and it's a 3-hour drive both ways, meaning that until Lisa gets back, the town won't have anyone to answer their emergencies. Well, that is, no one except for you. Lisa informs you that all 911 calls have been redirected to the radio station's phone line, leaving you as the town's only source of help with this killer on the loose. This includes our very own 911 operator, who has her own encounter with this killer, a figure known as the Whistling Man. A man otherwise known as Edward Marshall Mooney, who was thought to be dead after being chased to Ellis Point during a police chase, taking his own life by jumping from that point. From then on, the spot was known as Whistling Point, named after this terrifying killer. But from the looks of it, he seems to be back from the dead, and from here on out, the choices you make can influence whether a caller lives or falls subject to this ghastly murderer. Throughout the night, you get calls from various other victims, all of them reporting being harassed by this so-called Whistling Man, and your guidance is the only thing deciding their fate now. The head of the town newspaper relies on you to call phone lines throughout the office in order to lure the killer somewhere long enough so he can free his path and escape. A woman being stalked by the killer relies on you to get a message out to a nearby frat house that they need to move the party to her in order to scare away the killer. And a poor young boy just looking for love gets lost in the maze, and as he's chased down by the killer, he relies on you to lead him out of the maze and into safety. The killer hops from place to place almost instantaneously, able to get across the town seemingly without effort, and also being able to escape being locked behind a door without a key or even a lock on his side of the door. Is this killer really just some psychopath? Or the spirit of the true Whistling Man returned from the grave? But of course, as with any emergency, not everyone takes it so seriously. A group of dumb kids are going around pretending to be the Whistling Man as well, despite not even being able to whistle. And the infamous Ponty from Ponty's Pizza calls you multiple times in order to advertise his establishment. And someone else. A mysterious caller requesting the same song multiple times, alluding to the fact that she may know more than she's let on. Throughout the night, you will also have to explore the radio station itself in order to locate clues to help out your callers, as well as clues to a larger conspiracy. Clive, the former janitor for the station, seems to be hiding something. Could he be the killer? Well, by following clues he leaves behind, including a victim board that can tell you exactly who the Whistling Man's next victim will be, and a series of tapes throughout the storage area in the basement, it would seem that there was a large cover-up around one George Barrow's death. While it had been thought that Barrow had fallen into the reservoir and drowned after a night of drinking, it is revealed that Barrow's death may have been covered up. Toxicology reports seem to suggest he hadn't even been drinking the night he died, and some injuries on the body suggest that after his death, he had been moved, having his arm get stuck in the door of the car. Interviewing former guests of the show reveals that his body had actually been recovered from the river, not the reservoir, and those same tapes seem to suggest that Clive had threatened the coroner in order to convince her to falsify the reports. The final tape is a confession from Clive, but not the confession that one might think. It would seem that Clive was simply hired to cover up the death of George Barrows, having nothing to actually do with the Whistling Man. The mysterious woman calls once again, this time with an actual emergency. The Whistling Man is stalking her, and she can't seem to unlock the security system to her apartment. The same security system both your office and the local roller rink uses. Something feels off about this caller. Giving her the code to the door lets her in without alerting Roller Ricky and his dog Maxie, but by tricking her into setting off the alarm, you are able to give Ricky enough time to grab his rifle, protecting both him and Maxie, and revealing this mysterious Dawn as your Whistling Man. Or at least one of them. During a call with Jason, another victim of the Whistling Man, he reveals that he knows the true identity of the killer. But as he's about to give you this mysterious individual's name, the power goes out. There is, however, an emergency generator in the basement for emergency broadcasts. Creeping through the basement, you find the emergency generator and hear something ring out through the station.
Oh, we've got power. The Whistling Man. I need to warn Peggy.
A single, lone whistle. Fearing for the safety of your partner, you rush back upstairs, revealing Peggy's room open for the first time tonight, with no Peggy in sight. As you walk in, the Whistling Man slams the door shut behind you and instructs you to answer the line. Dawn's calling again, and she's getting ready to take out her revenge on the running mayor of the town. But how could she be there and here at the same time? Well, from the looks of it, she was not the only murderer on the loose tonight. Her son, Henry Barrow, son of George Barrow, is also on the prowl tonight, helping his mother get revenge for her late lover, as she finally reveals her true identity, Marie Campbell. She asks you to interview them on the air, so she can finally reveal what Teddy and his friends actually did all those years ago. Doing this will buy Forrest some time for the police to get back, as well as giving him the opportunity to reveal where Marie is. By making her talk, you're able to keep her from killing Teddy long enough for another unexpected distraction to arrive. Peggy. Her sister. Peggy is flabbergasted by the revelation that her own sister was the mysterious killer, as Marie reveals that she was kicked out when her parents realized she was pregnant with George's child. She tells Peggy that while her parents aren't here to pay anymore, she's here to pay for them, as she forgot her own sister anyways. By looking around the room, you're able to convince Marie that Peggy didn't forget, as she had kept the card given to her so long ago. Doing this will throw Marie off long enough for the police to burst through the door, raiding both the gymnasium Marie is at and the radio station where her son is at. Finally, the night is over, letting you catch your breath as Marie and Henry's killing spree is finally ended. This game is a refreshing take on the horror game genre as a whole. Unlike a lot of modern horror games, there are almost no real scares per se. Instead, the game builds up your view of this killer through the calls coming in. You know this killer can appear anywhere at any time, and while you're exploring the radio station throughout the game, you can't help but wonder whether or not he's just sitting outside, watching you. This is a much more effective type of fear, at least to me. Upon a first playthrough, it keeps you on edge. It keeps you wondering, whether or not you're truly safe, and it makes you jumpier at smaller things. In the basement section, Peggy calls you through the intercom to check up on you. Normally this would have been merely surprising, but with how on edge I felt my first time playing it, it actually did scare me a lot. I can honestly say I was truly afraid at that moment. That being said, unfortunately, a spot where the game seems to suffer is with its replayability. In order to get the best result, the choices you make will always be the same. After a first time playthrough, you know that despite all that tension, there's never really any payoff to it until the very end. And even then, you can completely miss the scare if you're turned away from it. However, I do think upon a first time playthrough, the gameplay is really interesting. The game gives you plenty of information to get the best results you can, and it's just all up to you to put them together. The only spot where I think this philosophy can suffer is with Dawn's third call to the station. This section did have me confused at first, as information was a bit more reserved and spread out here. Roller Ricky's call earlier, revealing the security system he uses, had been broken up by a couple of other calls, and despite both Forrest and Peggy suggesting that they were suspicious of the call, the game up until this moment teaches you to treat every call as if it's real. Luckily, on my first playthrough, I did have my own suspicions as well, but I still made a decision that led to Maxie getting hurt by calling the manufacturer instead of setting off the alarm. This leads to Marie breaking in before the alarm can go off, and while Roller Ricky is able to defend himself and his dog, Maxie does get hurt in the process. But I am willing to give this spot some leeway, as it does seem very forgiving. I'm willing to guess that 3 of the 4 options at your disposal lead to the 2 surviving, with just one solution allowing you to get Max and Ricky to safety without any harm. However, this is my only plight with the game, as I think despite that it is still a very solid game. It's a fun game that can be finished in under 4 hours, and it's generally easy to 100% it if you're a completionist like me. If you have any opportunity to play it, I would highly recommend it. Despite some of the issues I had with it, the puzzle solving is still very fun, and of course, as to be expected from a game with a premise such as this, the soundtrack is extremely good, filled with some 80s synth-heavy tracks as well as a couple country tracks, all originally produced for this game. I would honestly rate this game about an 8 out of 10. It has a solid concept, a good story to keep you guessing, interesting puzzles throughout, and a very good atmosphere, helped by both the music and the tension. With that being said though, I am unfortunately out of time. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please leave a comment below. I would love to hear some horror games that some of you may want to see. And as always, I hope to see you all within the archives again soon. Goodbye for now.